7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? This is AJ Capasso here from Talking with the Source. Dude, I almost forgot, before you say your name, I almost forgot to press unloop. So that almost went again as I'm sitting here enjoying watching what I'm doing, looking like a total idiot.
It just froze. It just froze.
Anyway, I'm here with my good friend.
It's Robin from Halford Paranormal. I'm Talking with the Source.
When you did the mask last show, that had to be the funniest thing I've ever saw. But thank you for
AJ, I'm back, bitches.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my gosh. People, help us. Help us now. But anyway, listen, I want to first just do a quick shout out. We're about to have our Global Ghost Hunt event. Head over to www.globalghosthunt.com. Sign up for the October event that's going to be coming up. This is an amazing historic first year for Global Ghost Hunt. So if you have a team, head over there, please. Robin's in a giggly mood today. But put your giggles away for a second. We have someone very serious coming on.
Exactly.
Seriously. Today we have an amazing guest coming on. He's been living an amazing life, let me tell you, out of a movie. And I'm super excited to get down to it. But he has uncovered something that is absolutely amazing. One of the biggest conspiracy theories that people have had forever about the moon landing. We're going to dive deep into it today with filmmaker, writer, Bart Sibrel. Hold on one second when my mouse dies. There we go. Bart, how are you?
Hello, Bart.
Good. How about yourself?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor to even have you on. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
First question I want to ask you is if you could just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, the people that don't know you that are going to watch this on our channel, and people that will see obviously on yours will know you. But if you could just tell just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into the big stuff.
Well, I've been a filmmaker most of my life for about 40 years, producing TV commercials, music videos, documentaries, and I generally write, produce, direct, edit, and shoot everything that I do. I started out as an actor and did a lot of theater, probably been on stage about 500 times, and that led to doing stage plays first, which turned into short films, and then I started a production company in my early 20s and started making movies for a living. My most infamous film is called The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which you can see for free at Sibrel.com. I think it's on the screen there. S as in Sam, I, B as in boy, R-E-L, Sibrel.com, my last name. And this film was financed by a board member of an aerospace company that builds rockets for NASA, who knows that the moon missions were faked. If you can imagine, someone building rockets for NASA says the moon missions are fake. This guy has a super high IQ and is building rockets for NASA, right? And so he gave me $1 million to produce films that prove that it's not a theory that they faked the moon landing. It is a sad, sad fact. And I can go through basically 4 incontrovertible proofs that any of the 4 by themselves would prove it in a court of law that we did not go to the moon. And really, there's probably 2 more that are indirect, one step away. You could say, innuendo or whatever, but pretty clear. So we can go through all 6 of them too. And so, I grew up believing, like everybody else, the moon missions were real. And for those who are just joining, AJ said something really profound in our little warm-up conversation, which was until he saw these films that I made and the new evidence that has just come out, he was kind of on the fence and kind of thought, well, maybe they were faked, maybe they were real, I'm not sure. But after my book and film and the details, it's just, they didn't go. There's no other way of looking at it. If you have an open mind, if you're really looking for the truth and willing to be wrong, it's weird. Some people just will not admit they're wrong, which is really weird. I remember going to church once and they said, "Who likes to be wrong?" And I was the only one raising my hand. They had an answer for everything, but not necessarily the right answer. And
Yeah.
they didn't want to be wrong. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's good to be wrong. It means, number one, you're not walking around in error. And number two, you're learning something new. So basically, I showed all this proof to this aerospace professor at a university teaching aerospace. And of course, the god of science is putting a man on the moon. I mean, really, it's the greatest accomplishment of mankind, right? So, how ironic from a spiritual point of view, you see, that mankind's greatest accomplishment was a complete lie. So, I showed him all this proof that we'll get into. And he said, "There's nothing I could show him that would make him renounce the glorious moon landings. That would be blasphemy to him." And I said, "Well, what about this?" I said, "What if you turned on the television? Buzz Aldrin was having a press conference and he's tearfully confessing, yes, the moon missions were fake. They were filmed at the Air Force Base, just like in Bart's book. I'm sorry. I regret it. Please forgive me." The professor said he'd still think he walked on the moon anyway. You see? I mean, he thinks when he's 10 years old watching it on TV, he knows better than the man who was there. This literally becomes a religious attachment to people. The first big radio show I did was like 20 years ago. I did, what's it called? Coast to Coast. I get like 2,000 emails in one day. Our film, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which just came out, outsold newly released Academy Award winning film Gladiator. It was outselling Gladiator on Amazon after that interview. And of those 2,000 emails, I guess about maybe 200 of them were extremely vicious. I mean, one said that they wished that they could watch me and my family burn alive before their eyes. I mean, all I'm saying is that the government lied at least once. You know, when something is that much of an emotional attachment to people, it's actually proof that they're wrong. One of the quotes, my book, which you can get at Sibrel.com, it's in Kindle, print, or audio. I read it myself. I put a quote at the end of each chapter. And one of the quotes is from a film, Heaven Can Wait, which won Best Picture in 1978. And Buck Henry's character, or is it James Mason's character, says the likelihood of one individual being right increases in direct proportion to the intensity to which others are trying to prove him wrong. And so when you receive these foaming at the mouth, rabid dog responses for simply saying the government lied about one thing, you know you're right. I mean, anyway. But that's kind of and it's like, who knew the government would lie about such a thing? In fact, guys, the number one reason I hear from people why the moon missions must be real is that the government wouldn't lie about such an important thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into the deathbed confession from an eyewitness who was there when they filmed the moon landing. But basically, one of the points I bring up lately is Robert McNamara on his deathbed. He was defense secretary during the Vietnam War. Okay. The Americans were against the Vietnam War, just like they were against entering World War II prior to December 7th, 1941. 90% of Americans were in agreement they didn't want to enter another world war. Then after Pearl Harbor, 90% were for it. We got to get even, right? So Robert McNamara and the CIA got together and said, well, what can we do to get support for the Vietnam War? We need a Pearl Harbor type of thing. So they came up with what was called the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was allegedly a North Vietnamese ship attacking an American ship, which outraged the public. They entered the Vietnam War, led to the death of 3 million people, including 58,220 Americans. And then they lost the war anyway. Robert McNamara said on his deathbed, he and the CIA made that up. It never happened. So I think if the federal government is willing to throw away 58,220 lives of their own people, I think they're willing to fake an image on a television when there's no independent press coverage, you know?
Yeah.
So I actually had from my father who was in the Air Force this VIP color print package that they were handing out of Apollo 11 pictures. And as a 4-year-old, I'd put them up on my wall. It was a literal shrine. You know how people have like Jesus shrines or Mary, the Virgin Mary shrines?
Yeah.
I have a shrine, believe it or not, to Apollo 11. So to go from that to the biggest critic that they are indeed fake,
Yeah.
you know, that it's just an open mind looking for the truth. Meaning I saw these pictures 3,650 times between the age of 4 and 14. Then I see this guy on television, one of the first guests on the Oprah Winfrey show. He wrote a book in 1985 called We Never Went to the Moon. He worked at NASA during the Apollo program for 6 years with the highest security clearance a civilian was allowed to have. He personally edited memos between von Braun, the rocket designer, and the Pentagon to correct his grammar, English not being his first language. He was an English major, is why they hired him. And he read a memo from von Braun to the Pentagon saying, look, if we try to go to the moon, you know, with 1960s equipment, which has never been used before, 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone, he says we have a 99.99 chance we're going to kill them on live international television. And so they bluffed, like in poker. So that kind of plants a seed in my mind. Another 10 years go by, and I had become a filmmaker. Now, a filmmaker's job is to make fake scenes look real, right? So I can look at these moon pictures and tell you not only are they 100% filmed with electrical lighting, I can tell you what kind of light. They're in my closet. Use them all the time. You know, they're an umbrella light. They were big, you know, brand new back in the 60s. And so I actually edited a program one day for the guy who made the TV show that, you know, that I saw the guy saying we didn't go to the moon 10 years earlier. And I'm like, well, who was that guy? So I get in touch with him and he says, hey, you're a filmmaker. You should do a film about the fake moon landings. So I start looking into it. And the more I look into it, the more odd it appears, like something's not right here.
Yeah.
And I could show you one little screen share. Let's just, you know, prove it right off the bat here. I'm going to hit the present button, share screen, go to my screen selection, and then I'm going to hit this button, and you should see my logo, right? Okay.
Coming up.
You can talk about the air conditioning, the flag blowing, and blah, 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 blah. You can prove the moon landing is fake with one photograph. It would prove it in a court of law. Okay. Here is on the left a picture that I took in sunlight. Now, all the pictures on the moon, according to NASA, were taken in sunlight. There's no atmosphere. It's 20 times brighter than high noon on a desert on Earth. The last thing you're going to need is electrical lighting. So here are two telephone poles about 5 feet apart. The sun is 93 million miles away. It's 1,000,000 times bigger than the Earth. It's going to cast shadows parallel in the same direction over the entire continent of North America, over the entire moon. In sunlight, it's impossible for shadows to intersect. Impossible. Over here on the right is a picture from the alleged last mission to the moon, meaning one of the many reasons we know they never went. It's not like they faked the first one and later went, because here's the one from the alleged last mission. The shadow of the astronauts going at 12 o'clock, and this rock about 5 feet away, the shadow's going at 9 o'clock. A 90-degree difference. It cannot be duplicated in sunlight. It can only be duplicated with electrical light, which means it was taken on Earth, which means they did not go to the moon. This is all the proof you need that the moon missions were fake. It would prove it in a court of law. That picture on the right cannot be duplicated in sunlight. You bring in an electrical light, you turn off the lights in the courtroom, and then you can get them intersecting at 90 degrees with an electrical light. You go outside, have a person stand and put a rock there, and the shadows run parallel. There you go. You just proved it in a court of law that the moon missions are fake. How simple is that? You see? So when I start looking into it and I recognize these things, I'm like, oh. And then on top of that, you have 2 of the 3 astronauts on the world famous mission. They refuse to be interviewed about it unless the president personally asks them to. They don't want to talk about it. That's kind of weird. You know
Yeah.
how many pictures there are? Still pictures. You know, of Neil Armstrong standing on the surface of the moon, first man on the moon. Guess how many pictures there are of him doing that? 0.
Yeah. They said he was the one taking the picture, right?
Well, that's their
Yeah.
excuse
Yeah.
for him not being in any of the pictures. But if there's a 500-degree difference in temperature between light and shadow and micrometeorites and radiation, you might drop the thing. You might want to have a backup camera. But the fact is, he didn't want his picture taken. You see, he didn't want to be associated with it. I believe they threatened to kill his family. And that's the only reason why he did it. Now, one of the things in my book that's not in my movie, my book just came out called Moon Man, The True Story of a Filmmaker on the CIA Hit List. This is because I found a recording after I made my second film, Astronauts Gone Wild. Again, you can see these clips for free at Sibrel.com. And I showed him the fake footage, which is one of the proofs. We have a footage, and I can share screen and show it to you later, of them faking being halfway to the moon with the 1-foot model right in front of your eyes, dated 2 days into the flight, with the third track of the audio of the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay. So I show that to an Apollo astronaut. He turns beet red. Where did you get this? He literally assaults me from behind while we're filming it. And of course, in the commotion, I forget. I leave a high quality wireless microphone on him. And in the commotion, my cameraman forgets to hit stop recording. So while the Apollo astronaut and his son are in their house with the door closed, and the camera is in the back seat of the rental car in his driveway about ready to leave, we're unintentionally recording the private conversations of the astronaut in his house. So about 3 months after this happens, when the film secretary gets around to doing, she did transcripts. You know, mind you, I have $1 million, so we have a transcript of every time we talk to an astronaut. 3 months later, she does the transcript, you know, with both tracks of audio, one from the wireless mic, one from the mic on the camera. And she calls me up frantic, Bart, do you know what they're talking about in their house before you turned and picked up your expensive microphone? No, I don't know. What are they saying? She says, they're talking about calling the CIA to have you killed. I'm like, yeah, that's funny. She says, no, Bart, they're talking about calling the CIA to have you killed. I said, that's funny. She says, Bart, you're not hearing me. They're talking about calling the CIA to have you killed. And if you like, you can pull the audio yourself. I got it queued up right here, and you can listen to it. And I'll do present again. Now I can turn my microphone toward the screen if you want, or you can pull audio from it.
I'm not sure audio will come from it actually, but you want to know what though? Everyone really does have to check this out because I find this so wild that this is said.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the clip here from Astronauts Gone Wild, and I'll turn my mic. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you know, we'll give it a shot here. Good. Got the volume up here, got the volume up on my television, and here it is.
No, we didn't hear it.
Did you hear it?
No, we didn't hear it.
I don't know why. I guess it's that microphone setting where, you know, it's trying to kill background noise or something. But, you know, I could try to turn that off in settings real quick.
No, that's not a big deal. I mean, I could always try and put it up right here.
Now I'm going to do automatically adjust the microphone and turn it off. Okay, we'll try it one more time.
Okay, yeah, that works.
So we'll find out what works.
Right.
Here. So there he is assaulting me from behind. And then later he, you know, threatens to shoot me, want to get a gun.
No.
And here it is. They go in. He said he wanted to take me to court. Never would.
Yeah.
Did you hear it that time?
Yeah. No, we didn't hear it. We can't hear the volume.
But I tell you what. you can take my word for it and, go to Sibrel.com and just, click on that device yourself, and you can see it that he, says word for word, do you want to call the CIA and have him whacked?
Yeah.
And, that is very unusual to be saying such a thing. Now, first of all, if I really walked on the moon and someone thought otherwise, I would find that hysterically funny. And, it's like with Buzz Aldrin, and that's, of course, a famous thing. He punches me when I ask him to swear in the Bible.
Yeah.
If I walked on the moon and someone thought I didn't, I would find that very amusing. And if someone said swear in the Bible, I'm like, sure, I'll swear in the Bible. Would 2 make you feel better? Would 3 make you feel better?
Yeah.
But it's as if I go up to him in front of his wife and say, oh, your mistress says hello. You see, a sword with no point makes no injury. He got mad because I'm embarrassing him in front of his entourage. And if they really went to the moon and I'm some silly person who thinks it was done at a TV studio, they wouldn't have to call the CIA to have me killed, now would they? Right?
No.
And so what we have in the book that's not in the film is a deathbed confession from a gentleman who was there when they filmed Apollo 11 at his base. Now, my father was in the Air Force, and it was filmed at an Air Force base. And I had to look up a recording of Bill Casing that I filmed years earlier. I'm like, didn't he say something about the Air Force? And he did. He said that the faking of the moon landing was supervised by the United States Air Force and under the direction of General Sam Phillips. And where was it filmed? An Air Force base. Now, it was filmed according to our source, and I'd like to share a screen and just show his face because let me go ahead and do that. Share screen, screen 1, pull this over here, share. This is the guy right here. This is Cyrus Eugene Akers, okay? And he was chief of security at an Air Force base I'd never heard of called Cannon Air Force Base. I did a little research. Every military branch has its Special Ops Intelligence Division. The Special Ops Intelligence Division of the United States Air Force is not at Area 51. It's at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico, where this guy was the chief of security at the most secretive Air Force base. On his deathbed, okay, he confessed something. You got to understand, this guy's about to die. And apparently he believed in God. And as best as we can tell from the scriptures, if you confess your sin and renounce them, pledge not to do it again, you'll be forgiven.
Yep.
So he confessed that he killed somebody personally. He killed a coworker. He killed a coworker because he and this coworker eyewitnessed the faking of the moon landing June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968. And his friend thought it was morally wrong for them to do it and was going to tell a reporter. We don't know whether he was ordered to do it or whether he did it of his own initiative, but he murdered a coworker. And then he went on to say that the reason why he killed him was to cover up the moon landing fraud, which took place June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, as you see the Special Operations Division. He also was given a list of 15 names by President Johnson personally. President Johnson said these people are allowed in to observe the faking of the moon landing and no one else. He kept that list, and I have it, and I publish it in my book at Sibrel.com. Lyndon Johnson, the President of the United States, one of the reasons he didn't run for re-election, maybe the primary reason, when he was eligible, only one of 2 presidents in the history of the nation that didn't run for re-election when eligible, because he knew they were going to fake the moon landing during the next term. And who knew that would work? What if you got caught? Didn't want to have anything to do with it. Neil Armstrong, only as an observer. They had a double in the spacesuit. Buzz Aldrin was there. The rocket designer, Werner von Braun. This guy I never heard of, Robert Emenager. Apparently, he's a science fiction writer. Spent his whole life saying UFOs and aliens are real, and spent his whole life saying the moon landings are real.
Wait, Bart, I got to stop you right there for 1 second because Robin had this theory one time. He's like, what if, like the government had people working in the Hollywood industry making certain science fiction movies to like, about aliens, certain things like, certain things like that and stuff. Do you think that people in the scientific stuff in Hollywood, do you think that they could be influenced by government to release certain type of films to maybe get used to stuff like how the UFO thing they're trying to throw in our face and all this type of stuff
Oh,
now?
absolutely. That's an established fact through uncovered documents from the government. They started using Hollywood as propaganda during World War II. And and I don't know if it's true, but let's say if World War II was a acceptable war to the degree that it was right to defend our friends, England and France. Let's just, under those conditions when people's morale is low, their sons and their fathers and brothers are going there. Is it okay for Hollywood to do positive films about the war and bombing and success and victory? I think it's okay, personally. You know what I mean? When you're on a date, you're accentuating the positive. You put on your nice shirt. Is that really lying?
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, when the war ended and there was no other reason to do that, they kept doing it. So in 1947, I believe they wrote a law that the government cannot use propaganda anymore. The war's over. And maybe some of that propaganda, I wasn't alive at the time, could have been misinformation. They could have intentionally leaked things to throw the leadership of Germany off, and technically lied to the American people in the process. I don't know. However, the CIA was created around the same time. And I think it was Truman was president at the time. He said signing the order to create the CIA was the biggest mistake of his presidency. He said they are accountable to nobody. They're their own entity. They're their own nation, like the Vatican, like DC, District of Columbia. And, the CIA repeatedly goes on national TV and publishes articles boasting that they executed, assassinated democratically elected people of other countries. Well, that's illegal, and they're just boasting about it out in the open. They lie all the time, and that's wrong. It's illegal to do that. And then after the quiz show scandal, which happened, I think, in 1958, by the way, Time magazine had on their cover, this guy's the smartest man in America. He won the latest quiz show, the national quiz show. Yeah. Well, he won because they gave him the answers in advance, because everyone liked him. It was rigged, right? Time magazine was wrong. Time magazine also said men on the moon. They were wrong. They passed on false information, probably. Yeah. So after that, Congress wrote a law. You cannot use television to deceive people. Well, the moon landing is using television to deceive people, isn't it? You see? Yeah. And then one of the clips, my book has 16 interactive clips. And one of the clips is, believe it or not, the Zapruder film synchronized with Dan Rather's description of it, because they didn't show it. No, he said, trust me. Let me describe it for you. Yeah. So we have the Zapruder film going by with Dan Rather telling the world what's in the Zapruder film. And he says, after the third fatal shot, you see Kennedy's head go violently forward, when in fact it's going violently backward. He said the exact opposite of the truth. You see? That's using television to deceive people again. And so this is very dangerous, because the first document of America is not the Constitution. It's the Declaration of Independence, which says when any government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of people to alter or abolish it. Well, there was certain information I was given by the relatives of Apollo astronauts, which, while true, they asked me not to put in my film a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. However, I do include it in my book, which was just published, including the homicide by the CIA of the 3 men who were going to be the crew to go to the moon the first time because they wouldn't cooperate with the fraud. Their homicides is not my opinion. It's the opinion of the dead man's widow, who I interviewed for 4 hours. It's the opinion of the dead man's son, who's a 747 pilot, who I interviewed for 3 hours. They have forensic evidence proving that the CIA killed their husband and father. She told me that on January 26, 1967, the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon came home from work and told her, "Hun, for some strange reason, the CIA is all over the launch pad today. I wonder why." Very next day, the guy's dead. You see? So our government is taking away life. And then I don't think the Constitution changes if it gets below 50 degrees. And I don't think the Constitution changes if there's fast winds, over 100 miles per hour. And I don't think the Constitution changes if the cancer rates go up. And I don't think the Constitution changes if, the flu season is worse than normal. You see what I'm getting at? So just because every TV and newspaper said men on the moon, they were actually in Clovis, New Mexico. So just because every TV and radio station says there's this many, infections and this many people are dying, they're just a bunch of numbers, aren't they? And the TV stations and newspapers were wrong about the moon landing, the greatest event in human history. So I think they can be wrong about lesser things. If you have to ask permission to open your business, permission to have a party in your own house of more than 4 people, permission to have your wedding reception, then that's slavery. Why do you, because you're AJ, that you can tell me, Bart, I'm sorry, Bart, if you have 5 people at your house, I'm going to turn off your electricity and throw you in jail. Well, that means you're above me. That means you're the master and I'm the slave. So they've already taken away life. They're murdering their own people, right? They're taking away liberty. And what if my party, my wedding, my business is my happiness? They're taking away the pursuit of happiness. Does anybody care? I mean, that's the thing about the moon landing that's interesting about it. And when I showed this footage, we haven't even showed it yet. I mean, they're faking being halfway to the moon with a 1 foot.
I can't wait. I love this footage. This footage everyone's got to check out because this right here shows right way.
AJ, think about this though, right? Think about this. Remember when we had Jesse Marcel on?
Yeah.
And they switched that weather balloon for the crashed craft and told his grandfather that he had to just say that it wasn't the crashed craft.
Yeah. We've
he told us that.
We've known for so long, though, that the government has been lying to us about things. We see it even to this day. And people are kind of getting a little bit more awakened and realizing it, I think. But, from what you've uncovered, though, Bart, it has been absolutely amazing. But please show us this clip because this is an absolutely amazing clip that you have gotten. But what I want to ask you about this clip before you explain it, because we're probably not going to be able to hear the audio again. How did you obtain this footage? I know you said in other interviews through a whistleblower, you believe, through NASA. Is this how you got this footage that wasn't for the public?
Yeah, basically, the footage, when you pop in the reel, mind you, it's a broadcast quality reel of footage. And let me see where my window went. Let me just grab another window here. And hold on. When you pop in the tape, it says do not show to the public, right on the screen. In fact, I can kind of show that. Here is, in fact, while we got the screen sharing here, I'll just do this for everybody for amusement. To Sibrel.com. I have 4 videos on the home page. I have basically explaining why the moon landing is fake with that picture in 3 minutes. and multiple arguments are made in 3 minutes proving the moon landings are fake. I wrote a little song about my adventures. You know, I spent about 20 years of my life doing this, and this little music video, which is the second to the last clip of the book, kind of is my overview of my little adventures. Here's the son talking about his dad being chief of security at Camden Air Force Base. And here's the famous, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. All the clips, like I basically write a chapter and then I say, hey, if you want to understand the next chapter, go to Moon Man Video Link 1 and then watch a funny thing happened on the way to the moon first before I talk about it. This clip will blow your mind. This is the sign-off national anthem from like 1970. And they're like doing the words below, you know, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? And they kind of change through this kind of Venetian blind ripple effect. And hidden in there, believe it or not, is consume, obey, consume. Do not rebel against the government. Submit, obey, submit. Believe it or not.
Wow.
And here's the kind of an explanation of the footage we uncovered that's a little bit different than in a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Here's a clip of NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS saying the same news story word for word, proving it's Central Intelligence Control. Here's the infamous Astronauts Gone Wild film, and so forth and so on. Here's NASA saying they deliberately destroyed all the technology to go to the moon, which they would never do if they really did, but would do if they're covering up evidence of a fraud. Here's a space shuttle astronaut saying we hope someday to go to the moon. Here's NASA saying the technology to leave Earth orbit has yet to be invented.
Yeah.
You know, right on camera.
Yeah.
And here's the, you know, them lying, saying the exact opposite of the truth right in front of your eyes, and so forth and so on. So we want to get to that footage. Let's just show it officially, and a funny thing happened. I know you can't really hear the audio, but one of the things you just have to go and see it.
Yeah.
Is we hear the CIA. Basically, they're in Earth orbit. They never left Earth orbit. And what a surprise. Here we are 55 years later, and they still cannot leave Earth orbit. Right? That's why there's mannequins orbiting the Earth. Yeah. So according to NASA, this is the Earth floating in space. They need to prove that they're halfway to the moon 2 days into the flight, right?
Yep.
So we have the unedited version of the CIA telling them how to fake the shot. This is a fake footage that the astronauts actually did from Earth orbit. They say there's only one window that faces the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera. Meaning, if this were really the Earth floating in space, they'd have to have the camera in the spacecraft, the lens, right up against the glass, right?
Yeah.
It can't be at the back of the spacecraft if you want to shoot the Earth, you know, far away. The lens has to be up to the glass, right?
Yeah.
But they lied. They lied and said the lens was up. The lens is actually at the back of the spacecraft. These are the walls of the spacecraft around a circular window, outside of which you're seeing part of the Earth. You see? So it looks like the Earth floating in space. You see, that's very clever. And then at the very beginning, you hear NASA say, hey, the TV picture looks great. And exactly 4 seconds go by. Because if they answer the question right away, it'll give away the fact they're close to the Earth. But they're supposed to be 130,000 miles away. So they calculated 2 seconds out for the radio delay, 2 seconds back. So even though NASA speaks to them and the astronauts hear them right away, the CIA is talking to them in a private earpiece, and they count off 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hear crystal clear a voice that's not the astronauts, a voice that's not NASA say, talk. Right after 4 seconds go by, they're basically faking a 4-second radio delay. So basically, I'll skip ahead to the end, which proves it. Yeah. I've been a video producer for 40 years, and I think I've gone through 8 formats. And one of the first formats I used was a broadcast tape format called 3/4 inch. Yeah. It was about the size of a small dictionary. You know, it was pretty big, and a huge cassette, and it had those manual buttons, you know, that you literally have to push down. And if you don't push them down all the way, they won't lock in, right? So the same thing is true when you hit stop. You have to press down the button all the way and then it will stop. Well, what happened is, and I can tell because there's a little flash on the screen, that proves that they pushed the button down. The electrical connection to stop it almost happened, but they didn't push the button down all the way. They took their finger off. They thought it stopped recording, but it kept recording. And because we have the unedited version, this is what you see. Now, they just said earlier that this exact shot, they said this, and they have in every NASA documentary, they say this is the Earth floating in space from 130,000 miles away. It's the same footage. This footage is in NASA documentaries and they claim this is the Earth floating in space. Again, this is the walls of the spacecraft in Earth orbit. This is a circular window with the Earth outside of it. This is a piece of cardboard, believe it or not, that they cut into a crescent piece to look like the Terminator line between night and day. And you're going to see this because during this part, they thought it wasn't even recording. So here's a work light in the top left that they diffused. They put diffusion on it so they would have just a little bit of light to see the camera controls, but not enough to put on the walls of the spacecraft. Now you're going to see Michael Collins's hands come in front of the window right there, and he's starting to remove the Terminator line in the screen in front of the window. You see that? That's a 1-foot model of the Earth, right? You see hands in front of it.
Yep.
That's the hands of God from outer space, right?
Right.
And then the lights come up, and you see that the camera was never up against the glass and that they're in bright Earth orbit with the Earth shine coming through. And it's dated 2 days into the flight, So basically that we have them faking right in front of your eyes, pretending to be halfway to the moon. Even my greatest critics, right? My greatest critics, and I still have to find your window. You're still there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where are you? Okay, here you are.
Got me? Okay.
Even my greatest critics cannot deny that. It's really remarkable. The greatest critics of me admit that's fake footage. I mean, you can't not admit it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You can't deny that.
Yeah. And so they say, well, they're just rehearsing. And I'm like, okay, well, why not rehearse with the real Earth out the window? If every ounce of weight cost $1 million, why did you bring a fake model of the Earth and a fake Terminator line? You know what I mean? And then why are you faking a 4-second radio delay if they're really halfway to the moon?
Yep.
And if the Earth is really out the window, you would rehearse with the real Earth out the window. Yeah. I showed that footage to the news director at NBC. You know what he did? He went,
oh, I bet. I mean,
then he said, word for word, oh my God, this absolutely proves they did not go to the moon. They never left Earth orbit because it's dated 2 days into the flight when they're supposed to have been beyond Earth orbit. Yeah. They say for the part that they intended to air, the best of the fake shot. We're 130,000 miles out, but they're not. They're still in Earth orbit. And so I said, yeah, well, when are we going to broadcast it? Yeah. He says, I can't do it. He says, this will cause a civil war. I will not go down in history as the man who caused the Second American Civil War. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
What he's really saying is, if we show the public how corrupt the federal government is, then it'll bring an end to the corrupt federal government.
Yeah.
And then what's supposed to happen? You see, because whoever killed JFK, he's still dead. Whoever did 9/11, all those people are still dead. But this is different. And he recognized it. This is candy. This is a sweet lie. This is taking away candy from a child and giving them a turd instead. He realized that this, even though, as best as I can tell, maybe 15 to 20 people were killed to keep this a secret. They say the Kennedy assassination witness list, they knocked off 200 people. Of course, 9/11 is 3,000 people. So even though this may have killed the fewest number of people, it's the one that, if the truth comes out, would just piss off the public so much. So 10 years go by. We
Wait,
get
I have
enough.
a question. Hold on, I have a question about this before you go on to that. My question is now, do you think that the government is not going to care after a certain amount of time because the people of that era will be gone? You know what I mean? If this
That,
doesn't get uncovered?
I'm sure they claim that, but the fact
Okay.
is they were supposed to open the Kennedy assassination files in 2017 and didn't do it. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
true.
And the
True.
law, I don't know if you've ever read the law that
No.
claims they're going to open them in 2017. It's absurd. It
Oh,
basically
no, it
says
isn't.
this: we promise to open the Kennedy assassination files in 2017 unless in 2017 we change our mind. That's what the law says. It says we
Wow.
will open the Kennedy assassination files in 2017 unless the president at the time decides not to do it. So what's the point of the law? That's like,
Yeah,
AJ, please, let's get together. I promise I won't
yeah.
punch you unless I later decide to.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Well,
Yeah, it makes
I
no
mean,
sense.
why even write a law like that? So
No,
10 years go by. I I didn't even show it. Somebody else discovered it. The new news director discovers the footage. It's like, well, why have we been sitting on this for 10 years? They call me up and say, Bart, we're going to fly you to New York. They put me up in the Waldorf Astoria hotel. You know, I
yeah.
think I broke the record on room service. But anyway, so and they do an interview with me. The camera's there, explaining the footage. They say we're going to broadcast this nationwide. Breaking news: the moon missions are fake.
Yeah,
And then they canceled the program. I said, "Why did you cancel it?" They said, "Well, we got a threatening call from the United States government."
yeah. How did they find out?
Well, because my phone calls are monitored, and
Oh,
because
okay.
what happened was less than 2 years ago. Okay, the book just came out. The
Yeah.
book tells us where Apollo 11 was filmed, Cannon Air Force Base, when it was filmed, June 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 1968. 15 people who were eyewitnesses. Come on.
Yeah.
Even the CIA code name we published in the book, it was code name Slam Dunk. And President Johnson personally came up with the code name. Basically, they knew they couldn't send men to the moon, and they knew if they tried, they were going to kill them on national TV. So they said, basically, the only way we can guarantee, remember the Vietnam War is going on. Nixon said, the greatest threat to the United States is not China, not Russia. It's American citizens protesting the federal government over the Vietnam War. That's the greatest threat to our nation. So you give them a pep rally, you give them something to cheer about, and you can guarantee 100% success because you faked it. You shot it a year earlier in a TV studio. It's already edited, ready to go. You can guarantee that the moon mission will be 100% successful. It's a slam dunk. Therefore, that's the code name. You see? And so I'm confirming this information while I'm editing my book. It took 15 years to write this book, 2 years to edit it. I'm calling up the son of the dead man who confessed he murdered somebody to cover up the moon landing fraud. I mean, you don't make that stuff up, right?
No.
And we have him in uniform, military police. We have his son saying, I lived right across from Cannon Air Force Base, So I'm confirming some of these details. And then while the guy's out, his house is broken into, even though he has security cameras, password, all that stuff, in broad daylight. And then everything about his dad that they could find somehow ended up missing and nothing else. And then 2 days after that, this is less than 2 years ago, government agents met him face to face, came to his door, and said if they ever talk to Bart Sibrel again, they will kill him and his family.
Jesus.
So it matters to the government that the moon missions are fake, that the truth comes out. They probably know what the first news director at NBC recognized. It's different than 9/11. It's different than who shot JFK. This is something, you understand, they put it on stamps, men on the moon. They put it on 50-cent pieces, men on the moon. They put it in the encyclopedia, men on the moon. They teach it in every university, men on the moon. They gave them ticker tape parades, men on the moon. They gave them medals of honor for lying.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
They recognize this is different. It's really spiritually symbolic. A film, like I said, go to Sibrel.com, watch clip 2 in the top left button, watch a funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
Please do, everyone. This is serious.
Okay, I open up with scripture. Hope you're not offended. But Proverbs has a lot of wisdom, whether you believe in God or not. It says pride comes before a fall, right? When you boast, I'm the best tennis player in the world. Guess what? You're going to start missing shots. That's just the way it works. You know what I mean? And so the Bible says, and you got to understand, until 200 years ago, for all of recorded history, until 200 years ago, the greatest technological achievement is the tallest building. How tall can you build a building without it collapsing on itself? And technically, that race is still going on. Every 2 years, Badai, Saudi Arabia, whoever, they build 1-2 stories taller. So it says about the Tower of Babel. It says it right there in the Bible, Genesis 6. The reason why they built it was to brag. It says it right there. It was never finished. Okay. Then thousands of years go by, and then mankind builds the single biggest machine ever built, called the Titanic. And you know what they put in publicity posters? Come buy a ticket on the Titanic. It's the ship that God himself could not sink. Never finished tower, never voyage of one voyage on the ship. And get this, so Johnson doesn't run for re-election because he's afraid the moon landing fraud could backfire while he's president. I want to do it. And Nixon, he doesn't show up for the launch. I mean, come on. Everybody is watching. The whole world is watching. And he doesn't show up for the launch. He shows up for the second one after they got away with it. But he knew they weren't there. What if him and Neil Armstrong shaking hands and then it unravels and the truth comes out? He's literally distanced himself. And once they got away, once people accepted it, then he shows up for the second launch. But knowing they were not on the moon, he said in a live broadcast around the world, alleged telephone conversation with Neil Armstrong, he said, knowing they weren't there, putting a man on the moon is the greatest event since God made the universe.
There's that brag.
You see, it means something. Oh, I didn't finish the first part of the story. So when Bill Casey asked me to do this film and the shadows are intersecting and the administrator resigns and 2 of the 3 guys won't give interviews, and I'm like, I turn it down. I said, this could be true. And if I start looking into this, that could be dangerous. And I said, I'm not going to risk my life for what Nixon did. No, thank you. And then I changed my mind. I took a challenge from a Christian client of mine, read the Bible. So I read the Bible 5 times from cover to cover, divided into 365. I wasn't a Christian, but it convinced me that there is a battle going on between good and evil. I mean, obviously, rape is wrong. Child molestation is wrong. World leaders promising, I will never do this and doing it right after they're elected. Obviously, that's wrong. So what's going on here? What spiritual forces are going on here? And after 5 years after, I said, no, I'm not gonna risk my life for what Nixon did. No, thank you. I changed my mind. I said, look, I realize, first of all, I'm going to die anyway. Might as well go out in a blaze of glory. And who knew it would literally be risking my life? Because one of the, actually, it's 2 chapters in the book. The first is called "The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to CNN." Now, I've never talked about it publicly until the book came out. But when I found that footage, I mean, I couldn't call Bill Casey on the phone anymore. They disconnected my phone. And I went to church that night and like, what do I do? I mean, I've got this footage in my house with a blind roommate and a 3-year-old son of them faking being halfway to the moon. They said, you need to drive like a bat out of hell to CNN and pass this hot potato. I'm leaving church at 10 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. I'm the last of 300 cars going by. A business that had closed 3 hours earlier. there's a van backed in to their driveway and didn't pull out when the other 300 cars went by, but as soon as I go by, pulls out. And I'm like, oh, he was waiting for me. So I just stop in the middle of the road. I say, I'm going nowhere until this guy's in front of me. And I got all night. Like 2 minutes go by. He's literally stopped in the middle of the road at night. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. So I guess he gave it up. He figured, well, I blew it, So he passes me. So I follow him. Know your enemy. Yeah. He gets on the expressway going to town. I get on the expressway going to town. 2 lanes one way, a medium, 2 lanes the other way. So I pull up alongside the guy. I want to get a look at this guy. Who is this guy who was waiting for me the day I find the footage of them faking being halfway to the moon? Who is this guy? I pull up alongside of him and I look at him. I mean, you can imagine going 55 miles an hour. He looks at me. Have you ever seen that sea documentary of the great white shark? They hold out like a piece of meat over the boat on a big hook, and a great white shark, leaps out of the water and grabs it. And his eye is like this big around, and I look at that eye, and you know what I say about that eye? There's no one at home. Yeah, it's soulless.
Yes,
it doesn't care if it's your mother, your grandmother, your daughter, or your dog. Yeah, it will eat them. That's how this guy looked. Ooh. It was the first time I've ever seen a human being have no soul. This guy looked like he would kill me, go home and have a fried chicken dinner and not even think about it again. And as soon as I looked at him and as soon as he looked at me, my car died. Electrically, engine just killed. Now, a military friend said they zapped it from a satellite. So he goes down to the next exit, loops around, meets up with another car. And I'm like trying to flag down somebody. They shut off my phone won't work. And then they loop around on my side. I cross over, they loop around, I cross over again. Finally, a cab driver stops. And I take a cab to CNN from Nashville to Atlanta, from like midnight to 6 a.m. or whatever it was. So I finally get to CNN and I'm surrounded by government agents. I mean, I've never said this publicly, but the book is like my final statement on the matter. If you want to go out showing that music video clip, Bart's Moonman song, go out with that, because that summarizes everything. It's like I didn't, when I did interviews about the film, I never mentioned this stuff, because it's like I'm already trying to get people to believe something difficult, that the craziest of conspiracy theories, they shot the moon landings in a TV studio, is actually true. Our government is that corrupt and arrogant. So it's like, I don't want to go into the X-Files, me being drugged and kidnapped and all that.
I would hate to not
complicate things, but seeing how the book is my final statement, I go ahead and tell what happened. So I'm at CNN. I'm surrounded by government agents. They immediately take the tape, this huge, Betacam tape. They handcuff me. And then I hear them talk behind me. Mind you, I'm trying to get it in the back alley of CNN, because they're literally blocking me from going in the front door. So I make around and I'm going to hand it off to my friend at CNN in the back door of CNN. I'm surrounded by, motorcycle cops and government agents and a van that they put me in, and it's like pitch black, which takes effort, when it's around noon. Anyway, the point is, before they throw me in the van, I hear them say behind me, "Where's the thing?" "Oh, I thought you had the thing." "Oh, no, I don't have the thing. He's got the thing." I'm like, "Oh, I wonder what that is."
Oh, that's great.
It was like this little hospital bracelet, like you get when you go in the hospital, something like that. But they were handling it with rubber gloves. And they put it on my wrist where all my veins are. Mind you, what was it? Oliver North said he was on standby to put LSD on the steering wheel of reporter Jack Anderson to kill him or discredit him.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it was absorbed, right? I start feeling loopy. And just then, some lawyer who wanted apparently to have a CNN center address at the cheapest rate possible has a literal back alley entrance to a tiny, 200 square foot office, pops out. And I say, "Look, I'm a journalist being illegally arrested right now." In front, he gets out his notepad and they're like, "Oh shit." I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, but
No, you're
what do I do now? And so without him popping out serendipitously, I probably wouldn't be here today. But anyway, I start throwing up. The drugs are so bad. And they start asking me in the van, or, these questions. And they have a guy in there babbling, like speaking in tongues or something. I guess to confuse me. Kind of comical, really. Something like that.
Yeah.
Then they take me somewhere that I'm in bright light. They ask me all these questions that are already on a clipboard. And I tell them everything they want to know. I'm in La La Land. So you don't have to waterboard anybody. That's just, not necessary. In any case, I end up, believe it or not, escaping their custody. And I made my way back to Nashville, Tennessee, where I say to myself, I got him. I got truth serum in me.
Yeah.
So I pee in a cup. And I got him.
Yep.
And so I give it to a friend to put in a lab in his name. And I said, I'm going to prove that I was drugged by, I'm in touch with the NBC news director during all this time. And I'm like, I'm going to prove on top of all of this that the government interference with the media, they agree the tape proves we didn't go to the moon. And then I'm going to prove on top of it, they drugged me. I got proof, scientific proof. Yep. I give it to a friend to put in a lab in his name, not my name. And a few days go by, we have a meeting. I said, well, what were the results? And he said, well, there was a problem at the lab. And I'm like, oh, well, what problem? And he says, well, they had a break-in over the weekend. And I'm like, yeah, so what? He says, well, funny thing, the only thing stolen was your urine sample.
Oh my gosh.
So basically, when your phone calls are being monitored, kind of like then they monitor the people you call also, you know what I mean? So somewhere in there, and so they might have used a laser microphone when I handed it off to him. I don't know how they did it, but they
had your whole place bugged.
I don't know, but I don't keep up with it.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, I'm just glad you're all right, but that's crazy.
Yeah, so all of this is in the book.
Yeah.
And so the first, it's about midway through the book. A funny thing happened on the way to CNN. And then there's the second time it happens. A funny thing happened on the way to church. And it goes into all of these X-Files, CIA things, including, believe it or not, 2 good guys from the government literally rescuing me. As best as I can tell, they were Marine intelligence people.
Wow.
And so there are good guys in the government who don't like what the CIA is doing. And they literally sent in people to protect me. So, and people like them asked me to call 2 people on that list of 15 people that the chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base gave me. Wow. And before I published the book. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. You want me to slit my throat? And they said, trust us. We had your back before. Trust us. Please do it. Call these 2 people. Now, I knew who one of them was. The other one, I hadn't heard of the person. And so I called them and I said, hey, I'm Bart Sibrel. You're on a list from Cyrus Eugene Akers that you were at Cannon Air Force Base eyewitnessing the moon landing fraud. What do you got to say for yourself?
Oh, my God.
So, it was basically after that where my sources, house was broken into and he was threatened. All that to say, the good guys are basically, as best as I can tell, tracing the phone calls of the people they called. Do you understand? They wanted me to call these 2 people to see who they called because they called somebody who later threatened my guy, my source. Yep. And the good guys are basically spying on the bad spies, as best as I can tell. So, it's unbelievable, really, but it is what it is.
It's fascinating, too, but it's unbelievable because it's like this is all happening right under our noses as Americans. We wouldn't even know this. You know what I mean? It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and let me, because I know we're about an hour, but let me add one. Okay, so the first proof we have is the shadows intersecting. Can't be done in sunlight. The second proof is a 1-foot model of the Earth, pretending to be halfway to the moon, dated 2 days into the flight. The third proof is the deathbed confession of an eyewitness. I mean, if I witnessed, I say in court, hey, I saw AJ shoot the guy I'd
Yeah.
say that's pretty good evidence. Sorry, AJ,
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, but the fourth proof is simply logic. Okay,
Yeah.
today, with 50 years better technology, the best that NASA, the farthest, 50 years better technology, okay? The farthest that NASA can send a human being into space is 250 miles to the space station, right?
Hmm.
Just pick a city 250 miles away, make it vertical. That's as far as they can go. One of the
Yeah.
clips is NASA saying we can't send them farther because of deadly radiation. Okay,
Yeah.
they say so on camera. That's why there's mannequins orbiting the moon and not people. Okay, so wait a minute. What they're saying is 50 years earlier, when all of NASA had 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone, they sent people 1,000 times farther into space than they can send them today with 5 decades better technology, which means
Hmm.
there was greater technology in the past than in the future. But wait a minute, that's a historic and scientific impossibility. You cannot have 1,000 times greater space traveling capability 50 years ago than today. You can't have that.
No.
When
No.
Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic in 1927, it wasn't 50 years and no, millions of aircraft, thousands times more complicated. They blew up the atomic bomb in 1945, 10 years later, 1,000 times more powerful. So if they could go to the moon on the first
Exactly.
attempt with 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone, we would have been on Mars 10 years later. We'd be in another solar system by now, and there'd be
Yep.
bases all over the moon. You see?
Yeah.
So that proves it. And so why I changed my mind is I realized that if they faked the moon landing, and at that point I didn't know whether they did or not, just like, now we know they did. I
Yeah.
realized if they did, if they faked it, that's more profound of an event historically than if they had actually gone. Do you understand that?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
three possibilities. They put a flag on a rock, yippee doo, or it was the greatest fraud of the alleged greatest nation on earth, and they murdered
Biggest
people
hope.
in secret. The fact that they faked the moon landing is more significant historically than if they had actually gone, and we're being robbed of this truth.
Yeah.
If you don't know you have cancer, you will die. And
Yeah.
until it is admitted that they faked the moon landing or just proven in the encyclopedia, then these people will still keep lying to the people and murdering the people to cover up their own crimes like they did with the crew of Apollo 1.
See, my question for you, not to cut you off, my question for you is, do you think the reason why they did this, not just because of all the things you said before, but do you think also that they might have done this big fraud, this whole hoax, because of the fact that we have to be this superpower and we want to beat everyone and be the first? I mean, is that? Do you think that had a big role? That pride, like you were saying, that
Yeah, I
ego
think
and stuff.
there's multiple reasons. I mean, at
Yeah,
first, and for a long time, I thought it was pride. Kennedy's not a scientist; he's a visionary.
yeah,
I mean, we went from never being in space to walking on another world in 8.5 years. I mean, it's the only time in the history of NASA that they kept a schedule, really, because
yeah,
20 years later, they couldn't even put an Earth orbiting telescope. They were 10 years
yeah,
behind schedule for that. You see, so the
yeah.
only time NASA's ever kept a schedule is the most complicated, untried flight of all time.
I
So
know.
yeah, Kennedy said they'd go to the moon before the end of the decade. It couldn't be done, and they just wouldn't eat humble pie. I mean, what this shows us is that our world leaders are juvenile. They set a goal, it couldn't be done. So they don't have the maturity to
Yeah,
admit that. And
no,
secondly, they don't have the moral ethics to admit it either. So we
yeah,
have immature, immoral people running our government. You see, my sources told me it's all about money. I mean, they only orbited the Earth, which they had already done. So the
yeah,
$200 billion that they got from the taxpayers, they probably only used a quarter of that and
yeah.
embezzled 75% or $150 billion they spent on who knows what.
Absolutely. Now, I have a question from all the things that you've been through, which we definitely need to have you on again, Bart, for real, because there's so much that I want to talk about, from filmmaking to all just the CIA stuff, a bunch of other stuff. But I wanted to ask you, all the stuff that you've been through with the CIA and everything that they've put you through so far. I mean, I don't hope that this ends and this doesn't keep happening. But are you still scared for your life?
Well, how many CIA agents does it take to screw in a light bulb?
You'd have to kill me, right? If he told me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I like that one. I remember that.
But well, I don't keep up with it. I mean, and remember to go out with the song. One of the lyrics of the song, it's on the homepage, the Moon Man song. Basically, I say in the song that even watching Astronauts Gone Wild makes me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Just watching it. It's like, did I really do that? Did I really get in the face of all these astronauts with the Bible? But when you know you're in the right morally, and that this is a spiritual issue, that's important to mankind, to know that their leaders are screwing them. Okay, they need to know. It's important. I knew God had my back. I knew it because I'm in the right, and this is them saying the ship that God Himself could not sink. God didn't let that slide, did He?
No.
And when they said the greatest event since creation, when He knew they're not on the moon, I don't think God's going to let that slide either.
Yeah.
You see, I think the truth is going to come out. I don't think it logically, but I think spiritually it might very well do that. Yeah. And so God's got my back. Good people in the government have my back. Yeah. And fortunately,
it's weird to say that. It's weird to hear you say that. Good people in the government. I like that. But that's weird to hear you say after all this.
Most people in the FBI and CIA are patriots. Unfortunately, their leaders are appointed by corrupt presidents. And this is the last chapter of my book at Sibrel.com, is what to do about this mess. And one of the ideas is to not allow presidential appointments of all the heads of government agencies. Let the rank and file FBI decide who their leader is. Same with the EPA, FDA, all of that. Yep. They should not be allowed to be, because many people in the FBI said they were investigating a senator taking bribes, and they said, if you keep looking into that, we will fire you. Yeah. So they dropped it. So we can't have that. I guess I don't really keep up with it. And then I guess the tradition is they don't go after the reporter, they go after the person who leaked it. They didn't come to me and threaten me face to face with death. They came to the person who told me this information. See? Okay. They generally go after the leaker of the information. Remember, what's his name? Seth Rich leaked, corruption in politics, and he coincidentally got robbed, and I guess the robber forgot to take his wallet. But so I got that working for me. Hopefully, I don't keep up with it. There's just I don't bother. It just it is what it is. Hopefully, they don't care anymore. I don't know, but they care enough to threaten the guy less than 2 years ago. I don't know. I mean, I don't worry about it. I do my best, and I hope the truth comes out. And it would, when I first popped in that tape, and it said don't show to the public, and I'm looking at it, is that really the Earth or is that the window? The light come up and it's the window. I'm like, well, wait, let me make sure I get this right. They're clearly faking being halfway to the moon, which means they can't go halfway, which means they didn't go. And I just tears start coming to my eye. I'm like, wow, they really did fake the moon landing. How sad is that? How sad that mankind can't even tell the truth about something like that. Pathetic. And this is why the truth has to come out. Otherwise, mankind is sunk.
Yeah.
When Orwell said, whoever controls the past controls the future. Well, this is the perfect example. The evil people who run our government are saying in the past that the moon missions are real when they certainly were not. They're controlling the past. Therefore, those same criminals are controlling the future. So until the moon landing fraud comes out, we probably won't ever have honest government, ever.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to. You're right. I really don't think we're going to have an honest government. I mean, hopefully, with how people are kind of waking up and realizing, like, with misinformation and the way that the government has been handling things, they've been kind of sloppy. I'm hoping that people kind of wake up a little bit and keep waking up, and we start realizing that, like, we are the slave, like you were talking about. And someone used an analogy that I said on this show a couple weeks ago. Person said to me, they're like, if you take red ants and black ants, you put them in a jar, they'll coexist. They'll try to get out of the jar. They won't fight each other. But the minute the person outside shakes that jar, they automatically will fight each other to the death and kill each other. And they use the analogy as that's what they're doing, our government's doing to Americans. They're shaking the jar, and we're too busy fighting each other, not seeing what we're actually, not being told, and all the misinformation and stuff that's coming around, and, misdirection.
Well, that's why I don't vote anymore. And it's actually, if you believe the Bible, it says in the Bible, a soldier of God does not get involved in civilian affairs. And so we have Democratic Johnson supervising the moon landing and Republican Nixon approving it. You see?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. Just ask Ron Paul or Bernie Sanders if it matters. If an honest person can run to the top, it can't happen. You see? So voting is a waste of time. They didn't vote. Congress and Senate didn't vote to fake the moon landing. They did it anyway. You had 90% of Americans wanted GMO labeling, and the president said, no, I'm going to go with what the corporations want. A democracy is supposed to be 51%. Get their way. 90% cannot have their way in this country. 90% wanted GMO labeling. It never happened. Couldn't get it. You see? Congress and the Senate didn't vote to fake the moon landing. They weren't informed of it. So voting for them is irrelevant, isn't it? You see?
Our other host, he's really big into conspiracy theories, and he believes he believes that the moon landings are real. And he said it's not one landing, it's 7 moon landings. And like we said earlier in this show, they faked that first one. They knew they can get away with it. And what we showed earlier, and the stuff that you have in your book and also in your film, he actually needs to see it to understand, because I was just like him until, like I said, I saw everything that you had to offer, and I didn't even get to read, the parts of the book that I wanted to talk about, or even, get to do yet. But I tell you, it's amazing what you have accomplished with this. And I think it's amazing that you're still talking about it, and that you're not giving up, and that you're doing this for not just for yourself, but for everybody, and I think that it's really important what you're doing. I think it's part of freedom and democracy that we should be able to do this,
I just think it's fascinating. I've asked one question the whole podcast because I'm just listening. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, what's amazing is that the moon missions really were falsified. That's what's really amazing.
It is.
This is the state of things. This is the state of our, leading world leader government in the world. They're faking mankind's greatest accomplishment and murdering their own people to cover it up and financing it with the third labor of people's sweat. They're taking their money to deceive them and to kill their fellow Americans. They're hiring sea agents with their tax dollars to kill people who are trying to expose the criminal government's lies. What's amazing is that they really did fake the moon landing. It's very profound that they really did. And it needs to come out. If it doesn't come out, we'll never have an honest government ever again.
It's crazy. And before we let you go, I just wanted to say, like you said before in other interviews, Bill Gates, he would never just throw away his schematics, throw away everything, after he made something amazing.
Yeah, that's I would say the fourth, or was I going to say the fifth and sixth proof? The fifth proof is a recording of an astronaut plotting my assassination by the CIA, which would not be necessary if they really went to the moon, and I'm some silly person who thinks otherwise. So that's indirect evidence there. And as you say, NASA destroyed $200 billion worth of technology. Now, the B-52 was built 70 years ago, and there's still 200 of them in service because nothing works as good. So if they could go to the moon on the first attempt and spent $200 billion, you don't take all the hardware and throw it away and all the schematics and electronics and original videotapes and destroy them. Maybe they should have done that with the atomic bomb, but they didn't. So why would they destroy all the moon landing stuff? If they really went,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just want to make the point. If they really went to the moon, they would never destroy their $200 billion investment of the schematics, the blueprints, the hardware, and the original videotapes. But if they committed a fraud, that's exactly what they would do. So the fact that they destroyed everything is actually proof of the fraud.
No, you're absolutely right. And I apologize. I did not mean to cut you off. My stream lagged a minute, so I apologize. Thought you stopped.
Oh, no problem. I just want to make that point.
No, please. I'm glad you did.
Everything is actually evidence of the fraud itself.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm glad you did. And it's so crazy because even they took with Tesla's, all Tesla's inventions, the minute he died, they took all of his work and they just stuck it away. So why would they do that with Tesla's work? But the biggest event in the whole world, they would just throw it all in the garbage and then we wouldn't have that technology anymore. It blows my mind right there because that logic is really important. But, it's like, it just doesn't make sense. There's so much that doesn't make sense that goes on.
Well, going to the moon for a 7th time before they go to Mars doesn't make sense. I mean, George Bush Jr. said, of course, 10 presidents have said we're going to return to the moon in 5 years. And 10 times in a row, it never happened. George Bush Jr. says the reason why we're going to go to a moon the 7th time is it's a logical first step to Mars and beyond. I mean, come on, guys. If we went to the moon 6 times 50 years ago, why do we need to go back to practice for Mars? I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense. You just go to Mars, right?
Now, my last question before I let you go is, what do you think about Elon Musk and his corporation going into space and stuff? Do you think he's going to be obviously dumbed down by the government and stopped or like hoax things and do certain things like that going to Mars, obviously? Or do you think that maybe he may be a truth seeker and actually be a moral person and really want to get us, into
Well, let me remind you, a rich person involved in the rocket industry gave me my money to make these movies to expose the moon landing fraud because they know the moon landings are fake. Yeah. I know those people. I have a copy of my book. I know that for a fact. Yep. Now, he has his little dreams of doing this and that, and he needs NASA's help. So he's playing ball, right? Mm-hmm. I know someone who works in the HART command center of the Chinese Space Agency. They said everybody knows the moon missions are fake. However, they have an agreement with NASA not to say so in exchange for technology. Mm. So they're playing ball. And you can't really blame him for wanting to take advantage of what NASA can do to aid him to do his dreams. Yeah. My personal opinion is there's probably a solar system event coming, comet, asteroid, rogue planet. And by the time that happens, going to the moon or Mars or who shot JFK isn't even going to matter anymore. No, and all they're going to do is stall, as they've done successfully for 55 years about JFK and the moon landing. They're just going to keep stalling until that event happens, and then no one's going to care about anything except how am I going to get clean water. Yeah,
definitely. Bart, thank you so much. Sure. It has been such an honor to spend this past. I know it's been over an hour. It's been like an hour and 23 minutes. I just thank you so much for staying a little extra for us. Honestly, all day. Honestly, it was great.
Yeah, please send me the link and maybe I'll put it up on my new podcast. I have a new podcast, subscriber based. You go to Sibrel.com, scroll down about halfway. There's a podcast button. Maybe I'll put this up as one of the rare interviews I share on my podcast, if that's okay.
Oh, that would be absolutely amazing. That would be such an honor. Seriously, that'd be
just
such.
Send me a link to it when you're done.
I will. One last thing I just want to say is thank you again so much for what you've done in this field, for all the research you've done for over the years, all the things that you've been through, like risking your life doing this, and obviously for a very, very good reason. And I'm just glad that you're okay, glad that family's all right, and I wish you well, my friend. I will definitely be contacting you by email because I actually want to ask you some filmmaker advice because I shoot myself and I just graduated from broadcasting school about 2 years ago. So I had some advice I wanted to ask you about if you can give me some pointers. But I just want to say thank you so much for your work. And Robin, I'll let you say your things too.
I just want to say you're willing to come back on again at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, we would love to have you on again.
Well, as far as risking my life, there's a well-known wise person who said, those who try to hold on to their life will end up losing it. And those who lose it for what is right will gain it forever. So
Amen.
There you go.
Great.
Promise from above.
That is awesome. Well, Bart, again, thank you so much for visiting us. Before you leave, just please shout out all your stuff, your book, film, Sibrel.com. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just go to S as in Sam, I, B as in boy, REL, Sibrel.com. You can get the book in audio, which I read, or Kindle or print. You can see all the video links there, which are part of the book for free. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, you can subscribe to my podcast, once a week summary of the alternative media, the best thereof. And I just started that. So
awesome. Well, I'm super excited to check that out. I didn't even get to see that. Oh man, I'm so pumped now. This is gonna be great. Because I work overnight, so now I'm gonna have a podcast to listen to overnight again. This is gonna be great, Bart. So thank you. All right, my friend. Care. Definitely. Take care.
No problem. Alrighty. Thank you later.
Sure.
Bye.
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 Wow, man, such an amazing episode. Before we go, I want to play Bart's song. It is actually a good song. I love, as a musician, I absolutely love music. So let me bring this up. But dude, tell me, was I not right when I contacted you earlier? And I'm like, dude, this is going to be absolutely amazing. Just what he's been through, the things that he's done. I mean, everything, the research he's put into this. I mean, it's just been absolutely awesome. But what
yeah. I just, like I say, I asked what, 1, 2 questions.
Too. Yeah.
But it's like, I just, it's right. It's all, a lot of it's all American, right? So it's more you. It resonates more with you, and you know what I mean. But just to listen to it,
no, hey,
it's just, and the people who were watching, they must have enjoyed it. Please send us a message, and everybody who was watching. I know that even the mother-in-law was watching it. She commented earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's crazy because I've seen a lot of different videos with evidence of moon landing fakes and faking and all this kind of stuff. But when I watched all of his stuff, and I really had an open mind about what I was watching, like the tape that he got from the whistleblower at NASA that was not to be seen by the general public, that showed that stage of them shooting the moon from whatever shooting the Earth from halfway to the moon or whatever, and it ended up being inside the craft of them doing an Earth orbit. That was absolutely incredible when I first saw that. So it was just awesome to have him on. But I'm going to bring up the song real quick, and we'll pull out with that. And just want to thank every single person for joining us tonight as we do another episode of Talking with a Source. Give me 1 sec as I pull this up.
Give him 1 sec.
Is my
1 sec, AJ. That's what I'm going to call you. 1 sec, AJ.
All right, I'm sharing my screen. You're stupid. All right, guys, here's the song. Coming up on the screen.
There you are. Much love to Matt. The mother-in-law. I'll see you tomorrow for a Costa.
On his head at 26. I grew up dreaming to tell my stories of fancy tales of angelic glory. Instead, my train derailed my truth. My dear old grandma, those roots. She said the truth was worth the die, to beat off Satan, to beat his lies. I left my dreams to fight for truth. The dear old grandma, old Ruth. Now I wait for seeds to root, to grow up large, a truthful shoot. Then someday when I am old, they'll tell my story I long ago told. Except now they'll say, instead of Ruth, Bart's the grandpa of this old truth. Not really true, 'twas Bill before me. and Jesus, my brother, waiting for me in glory. I grew up dreaming to tell my stories of fancy tales of angelic glory. Instead, my train derailed my truth by dear old grandma, old Ruth. She said the truth was worth to die, to beat old Satan, to beat his lies. I left my dreams to fight for truth, and dear old grandma, old Ruth. Like dear old grandma, old Ruth. Love dear old grandpa, old Truth.
Yeah, so that was Bart's song he did the music video for, the words. But I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for joining us again on Talking with the Source. My name is AJ Capasser. Capasser. Did you hear that? AJ Capasser. My name is AJ Capasser, and I am the host.
He doesn't know where he is.
I don't know what's going on right now. Go ahead, my friend.
I'll take over because he doesn't know who he is. Many thanks for watching Talking with the Source tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. From AJ Capasser, from AJ Capasso on the street corner, and from Robin from Haffern Paranormal, both from Talking with the Source.
Later.
It's goodbye from me.